Well, I'm so excited today to welcome Donna to the Core Connections podcast. I know she's got so much amazingness that she's going to share with all of us today. So, Donna, I always like starting our conversations out just with you sharing a little bit more about you and, what transpired to send you on this personal development, spiritual path that you're on, which again, I'm so excited to have you today.
Well, Erica, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I consider this a divine appointment being with you here today. And I will share why. Um, but spirit works in a lot of mysterious ways, always. And I always feel like I'm in this great conversation with the universe. And the universe is always reflecting back to us what we need to be paying attention to. And my core right now is calling out for my love. But so how did I get on this path? I was a corporate marketing executive for 28 years in hospitality. My father died when I was 22. I put my head down, I put my high heels on the corporate ladder, and I just kept climbing. And I got to the top and I looked around and I said, hey, all this isn't all that. And on the advice of a psychic, which I know sounds a little bit crazy because I was very entrenched in the physical world, like very entrenched in the corporate world, in the logical world. So on the advice of a psychic, I enrolled myself in a master's program in spiritual psychology at the University of Santa Monica. And that turned into a 6-year journey into myself, where I have literally become more of my true self from the inside out. And that's what I help other people do today.
I love your story. And I love how you were saying how you were so in the physical sense before. I'm really curious that's so obviously you were really pretty intuitive without maybe even knowing it when you had that session with a psychic that's like, maybe you should go try this, right? It's so interesting how we are led down our paths, right?
I love what you just said about how, maybe I was more intuitive than I realized. And that is so true on so many levels. What I became to realize was how I had trampled over and ignored and suppressed and deflected my intuitive voice, which is incredibly strong, incredibly on point, albeit illogical. And you can learn more about the details of my story in my book. But 1 year after I stepped down from my corporate position, I had a prophetic dream about breast cancer that was growing in my chest. And that prophetic dream turned out to be the real deal. Like it turned out to be the real thing. And Erica, at that moment in time, I sort of made this silent vow to myself that I would no longer betray my own intuitive voice.
Wow, that's incredible that you were really aware enough to recognize like we should do something about this. Okay, so I have a question around this because I love talking about intuition. It's definitely a word I've been using a lot more over the last couple of years and really trying to teach my students to be more intuitive with themselves. I get a lot of women that are like, okay, like I hear that word, but like, what is it? How can I be more intuitive, right? And so, Donna, I'd love to hear like your perspective on this, especially as someone who was very in the physical sense. And even though her intuition was there, which I'm always telling everyone, like, you have this amazing intuition, but what's the like thought process, or what is your perspective on how we can help women to shift from being so in the physical, logical brain to knowing when, like, okay, let's start to actually listen to and trust our intuition?
Yes. Yes. Listen to and trust. That's the key word, right? That's it right there. Okay. So let me start at the beginning,
Yeah,
because I want to give a little bit of context to
that'd be
this.
great.
So my new book, which is called Original Wisdom, Harness the Power of the Authentic You. Original wisdom is the infinite intelligence that resides in every living being, that is rooted in the energy of loving. And to sum that up for you, it's sort of like a fancy way of talking about your soul. And our soul, when we think about our soul in the spiritual context, it's helpful to think about it as this energetic part of us, right? It's this intangible, energetic part of us. And everybody's got one. And the energy of our soul is what we understand in our humanness. The way that we can understand this the most, the best, is to correlate it as the energy of love, right? It's like the energy of loving. This energy has an intelligence to it. And this intelligence is the information that comes through to our humanness through our intuition, right? The intuition is like the vehicle for this information that is available to all of us. So what I help women do is begin to identify with this part of themselves, right? And to really become more intimately familiar with their own original wisdom. And this is a relationship like any other relationship, right? We can either ignore the relationship, we can betray the relationship, we can discard the relationship, or we can begin to nurture it and cultivate it and pay attention to it. So if that sets the stage, right? I don't even know if I've answered your question yet, but if that sets the stage in understanding, like, there's this information that's available to us and it comes to us through our intuition.
No, I love that. I love the part where you were talking about it as a relationship, because I always am telling women, like, basically, like, have conversations with yourself. And, some people are like, okay, that sounds a little crazy, but it's like, I'm like, no, it's just, there's something about when we, like, when we start to have dialogue within ourselves, that it can help us to start to recognize, like, is it all coming from up here in the logical brain? Are we actually listening to what's going on from our intuition, or what are those messages? And I always say, and I'd love for you to chime in here, is that intuition is really subtle and really quiet. And I know, like, the busy, like, monkey mind chatter, as we like to call it, right, can really get in the way for a lot of women to be like, how do I calm that busy monkey mind chatter to, like, actually let her intuition really start to shine through? So if you have any advice on that.
Yes, yes. And I want to pick up on what you said about, am I crazy? Because this is where we get into the self-sabotage when it comes to our intuition. And I will tell you, our intuition is oftentimes, and most of the time, illogical. It is illogical. It's our ego mind that wants to make sense out of everything. It's our ego mind, which is the learned part of ourselves, that wants everything nice and neat and perfect and tied up with a little bow in a blue box up on a shelf, right? We want it to make sense. That is the linear part of us. But our soul, our original wisdom, it's not linear, right? It has our best interest in mind, and that might not always look neat and clean and organized and pretty the way we want it to. So I actually teach an entire segment, which is in a group coaching program that I offer called Empower the Authentic You. I teach an entire segment, which is on intuition. And it's really, how do I begin to understand the difference between these two voices, right? And just what you were saying, Erica, it is subtle. And here's one clue that I think can always tip you off. Our ego mind, the learned part of ourself, is very demanding. It's in a big rush. It likes to be right, right? It wants its way. It wants its way. And it has this like impending sense of urgency about it. But when we're talking about intuition, our intuitive voice, hey, it can wait all day long for us to get on board. And it doesn't really care about logic and what makes sense. I was on an airplane. I was in great physical duress. I had a frozen shoulder. I was in so much pain. I was on my way to the Ritz-Carlton Global Leadership Conference, where I was going to drink too much and I wasn't going to get enough sleep. I was going to continue to like abuse my body. And I was given what I would call divine guidance in that moment. And you can read about this in my book, Original Wisdom. But this whole big, huge thing happened. And I basically heard in my mind, yeah, you need to just walk away from your big, fat corporate career that you've had for 28 years. And Erica, in that moment, it was so crystal clear for me. Like it was complete clarity. And so there I was on an airplane, curled up in the fetal position with hugging my knees, packed like a sardine into an airplane, sobbing because I knew the truth for the first time. Like I knew the truth.
Was it, when you have those feelings, is it more tears of excitement or like that, like the scared side, right? Because I think that's a big thing that holds people back, is like they might hear their intuition and what they feel like they should be doing, but like the thought of leaving like a secure, stable job and paycheck and all of that to go do something completely else, like easier said than done.
I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. So for me in that moment, it was tears of relief.
Okay.
Because I feel like the gig was up. Do you know what I mean? Like I had been hiding and pushing this down for so long, like literally for years and years and years. And it was like a big relief to admit the truth to myself. And here's the thing about our intuition. And I tell my clients this all the time. We always know.
Mm-hmm.
We always know. We just don't want to look. And why don't we want to look? For exactly all the reasons that you just talked about, right? Like, I don't want to give up my steady, comfortable, secure, safe life, environment, relationship, career, right? Whatever it is. We love safety, security, comfort, and control. Those are the four primary concerns of our ego mind: safety, security, comfort, and control. And so anything that is going to rock the boat in those areas is going to cause fear to come up, is going to cause, sort of like burying our head in the sand. I don't really want to look. I don't really want to know, what my intuition is saying. And it takes a lot of courage, actually, to follow the call of our heart,
Mm.
to follow the call of our original wisdom. It takes a lot of courage. And somebody who can speak from experience, what I have learned is this. In our linear mind, we always want to know exactly what are all the steps? How long is it going to take? What's the return on the investment? What exactly do I need to do, right? Like we want to know like all the details, all the facts. When we're working with our intuition, it is a little bit like walking in the dark. And when we can take one step at a time, the next step then becomes available to us. And this is the difference between working in our linear mind and working with our intuition is when we're working with our intuition, we're working with a higher power, right? We're working with the energetics of the universe, of how everything is connected, right? This is what you love. Everything is connected. And when we are in that present moment, opening ourselves to the wisdom and the knowing of a higher intelligence, things are changing every second. So it's like with every move we make, the landscape rearranges itself and is different from minute to minute to minute, right? So it's like this, if I take a step to the right, things are going to get set up differently than if I take a step to the left. So when we're working with divine guidance and we're in that conversation with the universe, we've got to be willing to sit back, to not be in charge, to follow the direction that we're being given without like the freak out need to know exactly what's going to happen in every minute.
Yeah, that's the hardest part is you want to be able to foresee it all, but you can't. Even if you're on a planned trajectory, you still don't really even if you think you know, you still don't really fully know because things can shift. So here, the piece in this that I find again to be challenging for women, I've done a lot of this work myself, and I can tell you that I can look back and tell you that the decisions that I made, that I let my intuition guide me, were definitely the right ones. When I let my ego take over and make a decision out of fear or the unknown or something like that, the decisions didn't work out so well. And sometimes you have to do that over and over again. So you kind of learn that lesson, right? So Donna, when it comes to this, it's really trust in your intuition, and then that step to the right is the right decision when you're like, but the step to the left feels so much more comfortable. Do you have some tips on how to work through that versus just, hey, you got to trust it? Because that's easier said than done, right?
Yeah. Well, Erica, this is the beauty of spiritual psychology, which is a technology that teaches us that everything that's happening in our life is giving us the opportunity to grow and learn and evolve and transform into our next level of potential. This technology was pioneered by Drs. Ron and Mary Hulnick at the University of Santa Monica, and that's where I earned my master's degree in spiritual psychology with an emphasis in consciousness, health, and healing. And here's the thing, there is no right answer, right? It's like you can't make a wrong move. When you look at life and you can see how everything is giving you a chance to grow, then you look at life from a place of empowerment. You look at life from a place of feeling like we're in control, even though we're not really ever in control. That's like just an illusion. That's like a whole other conversation. But we can feel more empowered with the circumstances and the situations that we are met with. And when we're more empowered, we make different choices. Always guiding us to our next level of potential. So I think where we get hung up all the time is like, oh, I don't want to make the wrong move. I don't want to make a mistake. Well, what if there are no mistakes, right? What if there are no mistakes? And I'll give you a perfect example. When I stepped down from my career, I did not step down and become a coach, because that was completely outside the realm of my thinking at the time. I stepped down from my corporate career in hospitality marketing and I became a marketing consultant. Like, I left the shackles of corporate land, but I was still dabbling in that, right? And it was through a series of small steps that walked me into this much greater career. And when I say greater, I mean more fulfilling, more meaningful, more on purpose, more something that I love every single day and get to work with and meet like the most extraordinary and amazing women. But that's not what I set out to do, right? So had I gotten caught up in the wrong making and the judgment, the self-judgment that I, quote unquote, made a mistake, I suppose, had I gotten stuck in that, I could still be there right now. And then you and I wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I try to look at everything as, even if it was a decision where you're like, ooh, you recognize that it was more of an egotistical decision versus an intuitive decision, there's always still something to be learned from it. And that's something I'm always trying to encourage everybody too, right? Because there's no such thing as a mistake, because either it was sending you, no, regardless, it's sending you down the right path, because you're either learning something from it of like, don't really want to do that, or nope, that didn't work the way that I thought it should. So then it kind of like diverts you back. But without having done that, you wouldn't know that. Sometimes learning what we don't want is as important, or sometimes even more important, to help send us on the path of what it is we do want. I don't know.
Yes, I love
I
that.
think that's, yeah.
Yes, super important. In spiritual psychology, one of our intentions is to bring in as much neutrality as possible. And I love to say the most powerful position, or the most powerful person in the room, is the person without a position. Because when we're hung up on the way we want it to go, we really close ourselves off from any other possibility. So staying in that neutral place and approaching life with an open hand that sort of says, hey, you know what? I'm not smarter than the universe. I am not smarter than divine intelligence. And I'm going to just sit back and I'm going to follow the lead of the universe. Trusting, right? This goes back to what you were saying before about like building that trust. And I want to make a comment about that, but trusting that it's going to unfold for my highest good. It's going to unfold in a way in which I am going to learn and grow from this, even if things don't go the way I want them to go. The comment that I wanted to make about the trust is what I have discovered is that each time we can say yes to our intuition, we build that muscle, right? It's like building a muscle. And it's over time that strengthens. So, and I think people have examples of this all day long, right? Like it's a beautiful sunny day outside, but for whatever reason, you get this hint that you should take an umbrella. Well, maybe take the umbrella, you know?
Yeah, I love that reminder of it's just like anything, it's just practice. We have to just practice listening and trusting our intuition, and it does get easier. It does. I've always looked at myself as a very intuitive person, and I'll tell you over the last couple of years, it's become a whole new level of trusting my intuition. So it's always fun too, right? This journey we're all on, like wherever we're at, I'm always like, it's exactly where you're supposed to be, and it's only going to get better.
Well, so say
It's
more
true.
about that. Like, what is it for you, Erica, that has built that inner trust in that voice?
Ooh, the first thing that came up when you were saying that was the slowing down. And this comes up a lot because, we're women, moms, just busy, busy, go, go, go. We always, and it's like, there's never enough time. And it's like, well, if we think there's never enough time, there's never going to be enough time. But when we actually learn to find more space in our life, be more present. I know you started off our conversation talking about being present, and I preach that all the time because that piece can really transform women's lives. I've seen it and I've felt it myself. And so it's those little things, right? And it's finding what works for you as well and not trying to force it. I think that's like this element too. And I'm happy, please chime in with any of this.
No, you're right.
But it's like the little things that really can add up to big results versus feeling like you've got to do a 180 with your life. And, oh my gosh, is my intuition? Is this my intuition? Is this not my intuition? It's like stop second guessing yourself and just try to like trust. And I just feel like, women are so intuitive. It's just recognizing when we've got to slow down a little bit and just you doing everything. And trust me, I get myself in these traps too, sometimes of like, oh my gosh, I'm doing too many things. And when I stop and reflect on them, I'm like, yeah, you weren't supposed to be doing all that stuff. And you got, for whatever reason, it just kind of starts to happen. But instead of like feeling guilty or whatever about it, you have to pause, reflect, and be like, okay, well, how am I going to either get myself out of that situation? How am I going to find more space in my life? Like, what is it that I need to do or not do? Which I'm sure you have that conversation a lot. So feel free to chime into the not doing, because we're always like, what do we need to do? What do we need to do? And actually, like, you actually doing more is actually not helping at all.
No, it's
The
not.
busyness.
Not. But we don't buy into that. And I think that is, like a core misunderstanding, a core misbelief that we all carry around. And unfortunately, that's because we have been taught to equate our value and our self-esteem with our accomplishments and with, our, with, what's the word that I'm looking for here? Our achievements.
Yeah, success.
Yeah, our achievements. It's like the more I do, the more I am. And that is just a really big misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
So I love what you're saying about slowing down. I want to talk a little bit about the ego voice.
Yeah, let's do, because that's, I think, a big piece of what drives the busy, busy, busy,
Yes.
go, 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 right? Do more.
Yeah, totally. Because that voice is our inner critic. That voice is our, like, I'm going to make you better. I'm going to make you stronger. I'm going to make you tougher. Put on your big girl panties and get out there. We have to befriend that voice. And this is something that was like a huge aha for me on my journey, was the permission to be compassionate with myself, like the permission to be gentle. My God, like what? The permission to self nurture and like self soothe. And, especially as women, we have this strong, strong, strong voice that can be relentless. And so I think there's an invitation here. You were talking about earlier about talking to ourselves. Like there's an invitation to meet this voice and to say, hey, I see you, I hear you, and it's okay. Like in this moment, we're doing the best we can with the tools that we have to work with. And everybody is really doing the best that they can with the tools that they have to work with. Sometimes we don't often want to see it that way, but if we're honest, that's the truth. And I think another notice that your intuition is trying to get your attention is when you get wrapped up in a situation where you can't decide, right? Like if you can't decide between this or that, you can't decide between this way or that way. Often it's because your ego has its agenda items that it thinks that it wants, which are going to satisfy that safety, security, comfort, and control again. But then you have this intuitive, softer, feminine, quiet, gentle voice, right? That's maybe it's but barely a whisper. If you don't listen, it's sometimes can scream at you also, which I've had that experience. But how can we be more compassionate with the ego here and help the ego be in service to our original wisdom? Help the ego get on board in support of that intuitive voice, right? Because then things really start harmonizing. You're nodding. Have you had this experience?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very normal thing when you are doing the personal development work and really trying to differentiate, calming the monkey mind chatter, the ego, right? That just, it's so loud sometimes, right? And I know a lot of women listening, can resonate with the whole, the going to bed, right? And you're just like, oh my gosh, you're so like, my brain won't shut off. You're like, how can I get it to shut off? Or trying to meditate and you're just like, I can't do it because I can't just, I can't even calm my thoughts, and I know the goal, with meditation is not to shut off thoughts, but there is an element of the calming and kind of slowing things down. Right. And I mean, that was a huge, when I finally figured that out, or sure, I'm sure working on it, but it is vastly improved. That it literally is life changing, because you can then catch yourself when you start to get really, that ego, logical brain starts to get super loud, and you're like, wait a minute, where am I making my decisions from? Am I making them out of scarcity or lack or survival, or am I actually making the decisions that are really more aligned with where I'm wanting to go in my life, or what I should be doing, kind of things? So yeah, it's
Yeah.
exciting. It's fun stuff.
Oh, God bless all of us. What I find helpful in those moments is to just be where you are, because I think where we make it worse for ourselves is that we get into that judgment, right? Like, I can't meditate, or I can't sit here for 5 minutes. It's like in that moment right there, it's a call for surrender. And in meditation, when you've got that monkey chatter mind going, that's just what it is. You get to just watch the show. So you can watch the show for a few minutes. And I think what's important in those few minutes is that you don't give up on the few minutes, right? It's like you can hang in there and you can be with yourself wherever you're at. You can be with yourself in upset. You can be with yourself with the noisy mind chatter. And I think this is also a really important connection that we can make with ourselves, is giving ourselves that permission to like be where we're at. Like if you're pissed, be pissed. Like don't take your stuff out on anybody that you love, right? But give yourself the time, the space, the freedom to like let your emotion process through your body and be there for yourself.
No, I love that you said that. I think that's such a huge, huge, huge thing, is allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. I think that's a whole big part of all this. So Donna, I want you to talk about this, because I think that this is such a thing that is like everybody can resonate in one way, shape, or form, is the getting unstuck, right? How many people listening and feel like, oh my gosh, I feel stuck in whatever way it might be, right? Maybe it's health, maybe it's, business, maybe it's a relationship, or maybe it's just a personal goal, or who knows, right? So I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about this, of like, how can we get unstuck with areas in life where we just feel like we're stagnant, we're stuck, like it doesn't matter what we do, it doesn't seem to change anything.
I hear you. Yes. Well, I think that the conversation that we've had here today is like a perfect lead up to this topic. And all we really need is willingness. We need willingness to see things a different way. We need willingness to maybe do something out of the ordinary that you wouldn't normally do, or take a step in a direction that might not line up with your logical plan in life, but it feels really good in your body. Following that line of energy, which can be a sign, not that it could be, it is a sign of our original wisdom, is that little effervescence of energy, right? That little sparkle of joy that might not make any sense. It might not, you might not think it's leading you to anywhere that you need to go or you should go, right? Quote unquote, should go. But your willingness to sort of follow that, whatever it is, that little uptick in energy is going to invite you out of the stuckness, out of where you are. And as we were talking about before, we just have to take one good quality step. And it doesn't even need to be a big step. It can just be a little itty bitty teeny tiny step. And when we can take that one little step, the next step will be revealed to us. I think what's also super helpful here, Erica, is we want to try to identify the qualities of the experience that we want to have. And what I mean by that is, when I was in my old corporate career, I had no idea, right? Like I had no idea what I wanted to do. I didn't even know really that I wanted to do something else, or that I wanted to have a whole nother career, waking up at, the age of 46 and like relaunching a whole new career. But what I did know was I wanted to make a more meaningful difference in my life. I wanted to feel like I was contributing to something, right? So those are two examples right there of the qualities of the experience that I wanted to have. So when we can hold an intention, right, which is like an energetic container, the energetic blueprint of where it is we want to go, we can really take any step and we're going to be shown the next step that's going to bring us in the direction of what we're holding for our intention. I'm giving you like a super quick download on this. I
Yeah,
hope this
no,
is
it's
making
great.
sense.
It does. Oh, no, it absolutely does. I mean, I think the biggest thing I'm hearing you say is like it's that willingness to be open to doing something that goes against your logical brain and just taking that
Mm.
first baby step, right? And it's funny because I hear that in my world and students that come my way, and I feel like so many times it is divine intervention of them finding me, however they came across. And sometimes I even get women where they're like, oh my gosh, I just was left with no hope and that I could ever heal my body, or, stop peeing my pants or getting rid of my back pain or whatever it is. And, because I talk to that all the time, because I have so many women that have been told by medical professionals that like, there's not a lot you can do. You're going to have to suffer for the rest of your life. And I don't believe that at
I don't
all.
either. Yeah, I don't.
And yeah, I don't believe that ever. I'm always like, if you want, and again, back to your intention piece, whatever it is you want for your body, your health, your life, like, I mean, I'm right there to say, like, I truly believe it's possible, even when you can't see it, you can't feel it, you don't know it. But it's like, if you have that inkling inside, it's like, you just have to trust, like, okay, what are the signs that are showing up around you? And I was sort of mention something about this because this is something that happens to me often, is when something shows up 3 times for me in like literally a 24, 48-hour period, I'm
Me
like, okay,
too.
my attention. I don't know what it is about the power of threes, right? But, and if you have more on that, please share. But I just will put that out there for everybody. Like, the things will show up for us, but we have to be open to seeing them, right? And if you're not
Yes,
even open to
yes.
seeing them, then you could just walk right by them, and your answers to what you've been wanting were literally right there in front of you, And so I don't know, I get chills,
Well,
like
I
even
love
saying
everything.
that and thinking this.
I love everything that you're saying, and I have 10 responses to what you're sharing. But in the interest of the time that we have left, I
I
want to
know.
go back to divine intervention and
Mhm.
intention,
Love that.
and how you can't make this stuff up,
No.
Erica. You can't make this stuff up. So my intention on my mat with every yoga practice I've ever done, my intention is always lengthening and strengthening. Like, this is my intention. This is like my motto, lengthening and strengthening. And recently, I have been having some challenges in my core. And I've been having some problems with my sacrum, and I've been in a lot of pain, which is a whole big, long rabbit hole of a story that I'm not going to go into. But in you and I coming together, right? I'm checking out the content on your website and this core class that you have, and you have lengthening and strengthening like up there as a headline. And I'm like, okay, Spirit, I'm paying attention. So
Oh, Donna, I love that.
give me some love. Like, give me something that I need to know about my core right now.
Okay, well, long story short, the biggest thing that I'm always preaching to everyone is you have to understand your pelvic floor and how it functions and how it's the base of your deep core, especially with sacral stuff going on. And so there's some sort of imbalance going on there. We have to see what it is. Sometimes it's a little bit of an energy thing. A lot of times what I will see initially, what I think of is if you've been sitting a little bit more than normal, and the whole psoas line from the front of the hip through the back
Yes.
can start to pull, and we tend to not ever sit square. If you've been traveling a lot, like I find that if that is something you've been doing a little bit more of recently, that's my first go-to of like, okay, we got to work to lengthen the psoas line, not just the psoas muscle, the psoas fascial line. So there's more to it than that. And just really, really connecting within your body and be like, okay, if I'm going to go do my yoga practice, do I need to modify something, even if it's something you normally do, right? Instead of always going into like, say, a deeper pose that you usually can, if stuff's a little twisted, you may not be able to go as deep, and that's actually contributing to it. So it's like many times we got to slow down our movement, shorten up our range, as in like stay higher out of poses and squats and different things like that, to really find that deep core connection. And like, is my hamstrings and my glutes, are they working the right way? Or is like my sacrum twisted and possibly tucked? Because that happens a lot too with sitting. So it's like there's not a short answer to it. It's like,
I know. And I can't wait. Like 10 minutes a day though, you have my attention with this.
yeah.
I am definitely going to check this out. And this is like a big milestone for me. I'm going public here sharing this, but at this moment, today is the 8th day in a row that I have incorporated 20 minutes of just like somatic movement into my morning. Like I am a avid meditator, and I have a very devotional spiritual practice that I do not miss, because I could not do this job and like be a channel for the divine and a channel for spirit without that piece of being in my life and in my day. But I made this commitment about 8 days ago that more movement is a must in my life. And this is like literally as you and I are coming together. It's so weird and interesting, and I love it. I love it, love it, love it, love it, right? You can't make this stuff up. So I'm so happy to be connected with you and to meet you and to download your app and get 10 minutes of core into my day.
Yes. Well, Donna, it's just as good to get to chat with you. And there is something, and I like to talk about movement as, movement is meditation, especially when we slow it down and we bring our intuition and our breath and everything. And we really there's just something about that deep core where it's not just our abs, right? It's like, it's our pelvic floor, it's around our organs. We have so much energy, and obviously all the chakras, and, there's so much energy that we carry within us that, that I love to try to explore, like, that movement really can be meditation, and everyone has their own form of meditation. And for me, that is such a great way to connect with your body. And I feel that that's a vessel through which I like to teach women how to be more intuitive with themselves, because when you do it that way, you literally can work out less and be more effective with everything. And it's life-changing. It's more than just, movement. It's a whole other level, which you'll get.
As you were talking about like the line of the psoas, like I feel the truth of that in my body when you talk about it. And our body is a carefully attuned or a precisionally attuned transmitter. I don't know if that's a word, precisionally, but you know what I mean.
It works.
It's like we are an attuned transmitter for information, and we just don't pay attention to it, right? But if we would slow down a click and be more present to like what is happening to ourselves physically as we're taking information into our logical mind, we would begin to notice that we're being given information all the time.
Yes. Oh, yes. We absolutely are. Yes. So, Donna, this has been so great. I wish we had another hour to chat.
I
Uh,
know.
well, I would love for you to share with everybody, where can they find out more about you? I know you've got your new book, which sounds absolutely incredible. And I'm sure everyone can just continue learning more and more from you through your book and all of your and everything that you have online. So, yeah, where can people reach out to you?
Yeah, donnabond.com. And my book is called Original Wisdom: Harness the Power of the Authentic You. And it's a teaching memoir. It really is my story leaving the corporate world and finding my way into being a soul centered catalyst for personal transformation. And I'm a storyteller, so there's all kinds of good jewels in there. And all of my guidance, my coaching along the way that really helped me get to where I am today. Erica, thank you. This has just been so wonderful to be with you.
Well, Donna, this has been a pleasure to get to chat with you. So I'm so grateful that our paths crossed.
Too. Me too. Very much so. Thank you so much.